So, hey there, everyone. Welcome. And we're thrilled to have you with us today as we dive into some hot business to business trends and explore some game changing insights that could help shape your strategic decision making. So, let's start with a few housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded and it will be shared with all of you afterwards. And we do encourage you to ask any questions that you might have. Those can be submitted in the Q&A tab or in the chat. And the questions will be answered towards the end of our session in our Q&A portion. All right, so joining us today are two seasoned professionals who really know the ins and outs of GTM. Their wealth of experience and expertise will provide you with some great insights that you can put right into action and it comes to your go-to-market strategy. So first, we have Brian Brown. Brian is a SaaS pioneer and a thought leader in the marketing and sales tech industry and author of Move, the 4-question go-to-market framework. He leads client advisory and analyst research at GTM Partners, which is a data-driven go-to-market analyst firm, helping GTM teams and technology vendors achieve efficient growth by transforming their go-to-market strategy. So welcome, Brian. Next, we have Jeff Marcoux. Jeff is a highly accomplished marketing executive and the CMO of Bombora. Jeff has successfully driven GTM initiatives, RevOps, marketing strategies, and product innovation across a diverse range of organizations, from publicly traded companies to hypergrowth unicorns. Jeff is not only a distinguished marketing executive and a marketing teacher for Oregon State University, but it has also spoken at South by Southwest, Impact, and B2B Marketing Exchange. So welcome, Jeff. All right, so here's a quick glimpse of what we'll be covering today. We will start by covering the Upswell report, talking about what that is and what it covers. We'll then move into a topic everyone is talking about, AI, and the impact we are seeing specifically in the healthcare and manufacturing industries. We'll also take a look at the shifting landscape across banking and financial services, as well as cybersecurity for telco and software. Next, we'll take a closer look at how telcos are actively looking all the way into space to differentiate their offerings. And then finally, we'll discuss media and advertising, leaning into data privacy and what the future of the metaverse looks like. So once again, we want to express our gratitude for joining us today. And we're confident this webinar will provide you the tools and insights you need to fuel your success. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in.
Awesome. Thanks for that great introduction there. This is kind of a high-level initial bit of what we'll be going through today. What's interesting is we know some of you are in these industries, and this will be highly insightful in terms of industry trends for you to really understand your world and what your peers are thinking about and maybe what you should be thinking about in that. But also, this is super insightful and helpful for those of you who sell into the industries we're going to touch on today, right? Who market into these industries. What's top of mind for them? And so keep that open mind as you're going through this today and think about your TAM and those types of things as we go through that. We can hit the next slide here real quick. So we're super excited. We just announced this about a week or two ago at our Intent event in San Diego. And we call this the Upswell report. And the Upswell report is the first time that Bombora has ever released this. It's a biannual research report that's focused on several key industries. One of the big things that we're focused on with this is not only unlocking a lot of industry and market trends that can help inform your business decisions, it also showcases what's possible with intent data to help you understand your market, your trends, all the things going on along those lines to help you make better decisions and to think about how you could potentially be using intent data in different ways across your organization. If we hit to the next slide, what is the Upswell report? So the Upswell report is a deep dive where we went into 7 different industries across the board. We're not going to hit on all of them today because we don't have time. But manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, cybersecurity, software, professional services, telco, and then media and advertising. Those are the ones that we went deep on. Now, you might be saying, why those ones, Jeff, as you go through that? Well, one of the reasons that we pick some of these is these are actually the industries where we're seeing the most active research occurring for Bombora, for intent data right now as we take a look at that. And so part of this as a marketer is looking at, hey, how do we build a compelling piece of content that will help us have a door opener and showcase the difference in our data? But what's really cool is as we dug into each of these, we really started to find some incredible insights that we wanted to share with the market there. And so the Upswell report, it has some great statistics in it as you're going through it, and big changes. We combine industry research along with the data that we were seeing across our historical data sets across these different industries. So we're pushing this out now. We just launched it here a couple weeks ago at the very last week of May at our intent event, and we're excited to share that with you today. I want to hand it over to Brian here real quick, though, to talk some on the different lens to also be thinking about this through, right? It's great to see what's going on in these industries, but how else could you be thinking and applying these trends that we're going to go through today? So, Brian, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, super excited to be here with everyone, and thank you all for joining. Jeff and I, long before our current companies, we were working together on go-to-market, building go-to-markets for our own companies, and we had partnered up on a lot of stuff, and so it's fun to be doing this today. I love data. I love data-driven go-to-market. I love intent data. The Upswell report is phenomenal. It's like a weekend read. It's big. Like it's a big report. But there's so much in there. And one thing I think all of us can do better, if we lead marketing or sales, or you're in any sort of go-to-market capacity, the best way to build a company today and grow is to be efficient. And what I like in this data is examples of ways you can get more efficient with your targeting, with your messaging. So this is a quick framework that we have at GTM Partners. Everyone's familiar with TAM, right? That's how you fundraise for companies. That's how you think of acquisitions. It's how you think of what's possible over 5-10 years. But what we should be focused on in selling and marketing to today is what we consider the total relevant market. These are companies that would be ready to do what you do. They would appreciate the features you have. They're in the market you serve today. You have enough sales reps to reach them, right? And if we focus our efforts on those people, we can, those kinds of accounts, we can be efficient and we can grow. And inside of that group is what we call already in market. So these are like our ICP accounts that are also actively saying we're looking to do something, we're looking to solve something. And so to me, that is Bombora, right? That's like intent data at its finest. It's to say, within your ICP set, who's actively showing a signal that you should care about as a marketing or salesperson, or even in CS, right? For renewals and expansion. So let's hit the next slide, Chris. So, as you think about, as we go through the data today, and Jeff's going to talk about the trends, I'm going to kind of act as like your marketing coach and be like, okay, what would you do with that data if you were trying to sell into that market? Like, I want to kind of give you guys that lens. So one last quick tool set here. This is our ICP framework. And Jeff, you can just click the next couple clicks. It's going to build out the side here. Everyone's used to doing firmographics, right? Like, we're all used to saying like, oh, these are the 1,000 accounts, or these are the 10,000 accounts based on industry and company size and location and stuff like that. But to level up, right, it's to understand what technology people are looking at. So you can use intent data to do that, or what they're using. And then I love this idea of like readiness to buy, right? And these are like the signals that show somebody's interested in doing something. And so I'll point out a lot of readiness to buy signals as we go throughout the day. And the last part on there, or the third part, is qualifying characteristics, which I think are probably the missed opportunity for most companies today. If we did a proper discovery call, we could learn a ton, right? We could learn so much about an account, and we could better know how to sell and serve that customer. But what if you could understand those things even before you got on the sales call, right? And so qualifying characteristics are things we can discern and find through other ways that really help us understand who should be in our relevant market. And once you know your total relevant market, you can better arm sales teams with the best accounts. And if someone gets too many accounts, you can help them focus on the right ones using in-market data like we're going to talk about today. So that's the backdrop. I think just kind of put that framework in your brain as we go through today. You're going to see a lot of cool trends. But again, as a go-to-market leader, salesperson, marketing leader, like it's about translating these data into ways to better sell and serve your own market.
Awesome. Well, without any further ado, let's dive into the data, into the report. So we won't have time to hit on all the cool insights, and at the end we'll give you a link where you can download this, the whole report, and dive into your section and the full analysis there. But first, let's take a look at manufacturing. One of the things that was really interesting as we kind of looked at the manufacturing sector and what was going on there was that they were really leaning into the realm of building their brands, leaning into research into marketing tools and things like corporate social responsibility initiatives. But a trend that really jumped out was around AI. Nearly 97% of manufacturers are already using or are planning to be implementing some level of smart manufacturing technology in the next couple years. And what was really cool to see as we go through the data here was that in Q1 of this year, AI automation saw a massive increase in the number of manufacturers that were actively researching this topic, especially compared to 22 weekly averages. So we see this huge spike in AI automation research. We know that the general trend we're hearing from the market is they're going to be leaning into this realm there. Well, some of that goes along with the underlying and other kind of pulls in the industry around the fact that right now a lot of manufacturers are facing a labor shortage and a skills shortage as they're going through that. And so while we're seeing businesses invest more in programs to help attract and retain and care for their employees, they're not just looking at the human factor alone. They're also looking at how does AI really come in, help them automate and improve those operations and drive efficiencies there so that they can kind of offset that motion of needing the workers they want to retain and bring in the right skills that they need, but gaining a lot of efficiencies as they go through there. And so this was kind of one of the big ones that jumped out in the manufacturing space there from the report. I know Brian's got a couple thoughts on this one here and how you can be thinking about what maybe you should do with this if you're not in manufacturing.
Yeah, so we'll kind of go meta here, right? Like just like a behind the scenes. Let's say you sold or are selling or marketing into this space, into the manufacturing space, right? So Chris, if you want to go to the next slide. So I just put a couple examples here, right? So like let's say that workplace safety, right? So we'll take that last box for a second. So there's a lot of companies who have dramatically pushed into their thinking around like, we need a safer workplace, we need compliance, we need training, right? So if you were a solution provider that sold, an LMS system, right? Like, in fact, you'll think this is funny, Jeff, but last week I did a workshop for a company that has an LMS. They're entering the US market with their LMS. And it came up that compliance was one of their top use cases, right? And so like, this is an example. If I'm that company, the data, the number of the companies, the names of companies who are actually pushing forward in that concern using intent data, that would be my list. I would take that, I would arm the sales team, right? I would build messaging around it. I'd build cadence outreach around it. I'd build marketing campaigns around it. I would lean into that message, right? And so inventory planning, you could do the similar thing. Inventory planning, if you think about it, like people are looking to de-risk. They're looking to forecast. They're looking to predict. They're looking to be efficient. So if you do any solutions around those things, right, that would be the message you'd be leaning into on the accounts that are showing intent for that. AI automation is big. You're gonna see that trend show up everywhere. Like everyone's thinking about AI right now. But again, automation is back to its efficient growth. It's doing more with less. It's productivity. It's deploying resources better, right? So if you're a provider of anything that touches that area, right? If you can map your solution to efficiency, to workflows, to utilizing the tools and people better, right? Like that would be, I would take the list of accounts showing intent for that, and I would lean in on that. So I hope that's kind of just helpful as you think about, broadening what you think of as intent. There's so many topics that you could consider using as a way to break into target accounts.
Awesome. Let's keep moving along. Let's look at healthcare. And again, there inside of the Upswell report here, we did print a couple copies for our intent event there. But there are pages with tons of statistics and things you can take a look at, and it's a 60+ page report all in. So again, we're barely scratching the surface on this. But healthcare, what's going on in healthcare? So coming out of kind of the big focus on COVID and things along those lines, one of the big shifts that we saw was this pivot in focus on patient experience, and in particular creating positive patient experiences, because that's one of the critical items of success. In fact, there were some studies that we were looking at that showed that patients were 5 times more likely to select a practice where they had a positive experience. And so as such, it's no surprise that, right, coming out of in the wake of the pandemic, right, healthcare institutions are prioritizing that patient experience as they work to attract patients back into their clinics, as they work to attract doctors' offices into, right, their healthcare systems and things along those lines. Is the ones that offer those great experiences are also the more profitable ones and things along those lines. And so one of the things that's really interesting, one of the ways that they're looking at this is in the realm of AI. And so healthcare researchers have been exploring different ways that they can be applying AI in everything from diagnostics to patient care for a good while. But now the potential for AI in healthcare is beginning to actually be realized, as these AI models are being implemented in a lot of different areas across medicine. One thing that's interesting is you talk to healthcare leaders, about 85% of them say that they have an AI strategy, while less than half have already begun implementing that strategy. And so as we looked at what the Bombora research data was telling us in terms of these institutions was, that the number of healthcare organizations that were actively researching an AI automation kind of category there increased by 138%, with nearly just under 2,000 organizations doing that every single week. So that's huge, right? And we saw machine learning increase by 12%, with 1,300 healthcare organizations actively looking at that. So while 85% have some sort of AI strategy, less than half are implementing, and those that are implementing are starting to really lean into it right now as we head into the first part of this year. And so if you're in healthcare, you should be actively thinking about how AI can impact that patient experience, how that can impact your diagnostics, right? That patient care motion all in across all aspects of your business, everything from, right, the back-end systems and diagnostic tools to contact centers and things like that. But then if you're not actively involved in looking at a project, you're probably falling behind compared to your competitors. And so this is a big area you'd want to be taking a look at there holistically. Brian, any thoughts on this one?
Well, I like how you just gave some really good examples of how this kind of data can inform strategy. So I think we're all very familiar with intent data, or hopefully everyone's familiar with intent data as a way to go to market, like to find the ideal fit, accounts that you should sell to. But you just kind of opened up like, hey, another use case for this data is actually to think and inform strategy, which I think is so important. I also think if you are a salesperson or you need to enable sellers, the quality of discovery and the quality of relatability and credibility that they can have if they understand the trends in the market they're selling into, right? So if I'm trying to sell into healthcare, like I need to know a lot like about this, right? And so I love these trends because I think they can get people pretty quickly to have a strong point of view to bring something of value when they're trying to create a sales opportunity.
Yeah, that was actually one of the big reasons we did this report was I know a lot of companies still follow, the challenger sales model or things like that, but data unlocks doors for sales and marketing people. And being able to, if you're selling AI or things along those lines, you can lean in and say, hey, how are you approaching your AI strategy? Did you know that nearly 2,000 healthcare companies are actively doing research in this? Are you falling behind or getting ahead as you go through that? Now, sellers are much more eloquent than I am as you go through that, but data unlocks those doors. It creates a conversation starter. It creates a spark on that sales and marketing side, but it's also so incredibly insightful on strategy. I'll give a personal story in healthcare is some of you have probably been targeted by the ads of there's a new medical provider called Forward. And their whole world is in offering, it's kind of not quite concierge medicine, but more on demand, holistic in their care. And it's modern compared to the going in, sitting in a waiting room. Like, I have an app, I schedule it online. There's a whole world of doctors. When you're in the room, like there's a smart board that's taking all the notes and action items, and they're holistically rethinking the patient experience as they go through that in different programs and things along those lines. And so, we're seeing the innovation of both AI and then how they're using that to win business in it. And so that's kind of a big gut check as you look at what's going on in that industry, of how it's changing strategy and it's changing the way in which we go to market selling into healthcare.
Yeah, I love that.
All right, let's keep cruising on here. So financial services, this was a really interesting one to take a look at. So the economy has been fairly unclear. There's been a lot of impact from that lack of clarity on the industry as a whole. With financial advisors, financial professionals, we're all seeking ways to how do they mitigate, how do they manage risk, that's associated with this market volatility that we're seeing, bankruptcy, insolvency. Over the top of that, there's been a lot of regulatory reshaping that's been going on within the banking sector. And it's led to this heightened level of awareness for a need for more stringent financial controls, and how do we adhere to global accounting standards and things like that, especially for corporations. So as we think about those recent shakeups, that uncertainty that's really started to prompt different financial institutions to reinforce their operations holistically and know that they need to maintain adequate cash reserves on hand. Our recent report that we were looking at showed that 82% of the public supported increased banking regulations due to some of the financial missteps that we saw even just throughout the first half of this year. So this has led to a lot of activity around liquidity management, around hedging, finance insurance, as they're looking at what are the new regulations that are on the horizon. And so this led to a very interesting picture as we looked at our intent data for this industry, was that financial services organizations are researching laws and regulations dramatically more up in Q1, up 183% compared to their averages in 22. That's 1,300 businesses a week researching that topic on average there. We saw research into regulations as a topic increased by 35%, which really was suggesting that businesses are looking to better understand the regulatory changes that are coming for them so that they can get ahead of it and kind of try to be to bring some stability to the market. Another big thing that jumped out, though, is not only are these institutions seeking to understand the changes, they're also doing research to help ensure that they're compliant with the changes that they're seeing. So we saw increases in research into audit experience of 56%, which really reflected kind of that awareness of that need to bring rigorous financial controls and regulatory compliance to the industry there. We saw this coupled in many other different areas there in terms of them reinvesting in trust as that was impacted, as well as significant increases in research into bankruptcy and bankruptcy law and understanding the nuance and levers in that space as well. So really interesting on this one, with a lot of different kind of motions going on behind the scenes and a lot of different opportunities there in front of us.
This data makes you sound like a banking expert, Jeff. I love it. Like you could have been the keynote speaker at like a financial services event. It's incredible. Like I love this data. I love how it just gives you a strategic view into an industry so quickly. It's super cool.
Well, it's really cool. Again, if I'm in the financial services world, I want to be thinking about these things, right? Again, if I'm not getting ahead, I'm probably falling behind. If I'm not thinking about these things, chances are my competition is. And so I want to be looking at those, and a lot of big opportunity. Again, if we put on our sales and marketing hat here of if I'm selling into this industry, there's a lot of great insight that can be gleaned from, hey, if I sell certain types of services here, this might be a really great focus area for me in terms of adding this or prioritizing this in that total relevant market right now versus other things I could be doing. Awesome. Let's keep cruising on. Software. This one was really interesting. AI, right? Not a big surprise. A big rise of it going on. But what was interesting was while we're seeing that rise in AI, we're seeing in the software industry this increasingly complex challenge around cybersecurity. And hopefully this probably hits home for some people on this call right now too, right? This, with the growing digital connectivity that we've got going on every single day of our data flowing to and fro, right? It's made organizations just more vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks as they're going through that. A great case in point was just this week, the Move It cyber attack that now they're trying to hold the US government for ransom on, and it's impacted millions of us. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to dig through all my reports and stuff yet, but hits us just this week. It's hitting us every single day. Companies, in particular, software companies, very often operate with an assumed breach mentality, assuming that they're already compromised, right? What's also interesting, though, is that a recent study was found that just 15% of organizations felt that they were prepared to defend against cybersecurity threats that they're facing today. And so the growing focus on cyber threats, particularly those that are stemming from geopolitical instability or state actors, is driving businesses to research new ways of safeguarding against cyber attacks. And we have a cyber deep dive as an industry as a whole, kind of what they were looking at. If that's of interest to you, definitely check it out. This included looking at things like agentless security and vendor security assessments. Because what we were seeing in the intent research was that by adopting these proactive approaches and active cyber defense strategies, they're trying to prepare for the potential cybersecurity incidents. And then also their mitigation strategies behind the scenes as they go through that, especially as these get more sophisticated. And so we saw just a huge spike in late Q4 and into early Q1 of this year, nearly over 3,100% increase in research in this category. Everything from cyber warfare, electronic warfare, defense tools across the board there. So cyber security, access to data is pretty much the number one top thing on the minds of these software companies. And I think even just the breach this week is a great case in point along those lines.
And I'll just add too, I think generative AI, B2C or B2B, if you're a SaaS company, and I'm, maybe particularly thinking B2B right now, but like pretty much every B2B use case and application probably has a roadmap right now for how generative AI can improve the things they were already trying to get people to do in their products. And I think it has a lot of people rethinking the role of the software, the role of the user interface, right? So I think generative AI in general will create such a opportunity to rethink the way we build customer experiences, because we can allow them to interact with us through words instead of 10 clicks in the UI. And like if you take something like here's a good example. If you go to Google today and you search, find emerging technology vendors. Well, Google doesn't know what emerging technology means as a concept, so it just looks for websites that have a vendor name and the word emerging technology near it, right? That would be your list. But generative AI actually knows what that means, the essence of emerging technology. It has a whole construct of belief around that is go find companies. So like, I just think, oh my gosh, there's so much opportunity that's going to unlock for software. So whether you're a software company or you're selling into software, I just think there's so much trend here that we can all participate on.
Yeah, and AI doesn't just limit itself to OpenAI and ChatGPT, right? Everything from IoT and everything surrounding this space too is super interesting there. So let's dive into another fun one that was particularly interesting to me as a little bit of a space geek here, going through telcos. So what was really interesting, a couple trends really popped here as we were looking at this one. So, right, the overarching digital landscape is morphing, right? It's changing a lot, but so are the threats and the risks that come with that. We as consumers have this insatiable demand for fast and reliable connectivity. Right? I have 5G on my iPhone, and I kind of get annoyed when I hit a dead spot at my son's school, which is like less than half a mile from my house here, right? And I'm still like, oh my gosh, why haven't they solved that yet, right? We want that connectivity, for better for worse, right? That's how we feel. And so this has really propelled that rise of both the public and the private 5G networks as you go through that. And so that massive just growth of data passing through networks has put cybersecurity at the absolute forefront of telco concerns, right? So in response to these threats, we've seen big increases in research around areas pertaining to things like cyber warfare, electronic warfare going on in that space. There are also increasing research in more traditional threats like malware and vulnerabilities, but we're seeing a lot of this big increase in these concerns of zero-day threats, right? That the new frontier of attacks based on the amount of data flowing through these new systems. And so as telcos are looking to address these emerging risks, right, they're also looking to protect that data with new encryption methods, right? New security tools. We're seeing research into encryption-related talks jumping substantially in the back half of 22 there as we went through that. But protecting the network and the data is only one interesting trend that popped here. Another quick one I'll hit on that was really interesting, just in terms from a brand perspective. Telcos are far researching Amazon Web Services and Amazon far more than they're researching Microsoft Azure. Really interesting, right? If I'm Microsoft from a brand health perspective, this is a particularly interesting nugget for me. I have room to gain and to grow my brand and frankly my appeal with telcos, if that's part of that focused ICP for me this year, right? A very interesting nugget to look at there. But now, this is the fun one. Space. As these telco providers are seeking to look at expanding these networks, right? Serving more remote, underserved areas, like my parents have a Starlink that they go through that. I've got a couple friends who live out of their vans, right? Those big Sprinter vans. And they're full digital nomads with their Starlink on top of their thing every day at the end of it, right? But there's infrastructure that's needed to accomplish that. And we're seeing a lot more investment in space operations. And this includes both satellites and orbital ground stations as we go through that to support that data transmission. So as you look at a year ago compared to now, this concept of LEO, low Earth orbit, increased 26% just in Q1 alone, which is a huge increase in a very short period of time in a very specialized solution area, right? What was also really cool to see was that SpaceX, right, the leading business right now, kind of in private space support, they increased by it was only 8%, but there's nearly 1,500 telcos actively researching them. So if I'm SpaceX, it's great that my overall research might have only gone up a little bit, but I can tell what industries are most interested in me, telco being one of them, and pursuing active marketing campaigns, sales efforts against those as you're taking a look at that. And so, as more players are starting to look in and enter this space race, businesses that are going to be able to provide space-related infrastructure and services are likely going to find a lot of success in the growing market here. So again, if I'm looking at what markets maybe I'm thinking about targeting, if I'm in the space-related industry and infrastructure, I might look at leaning into telco over another one based on the research and the interest that I'm seeing in that space there. So a lot of different angles to take a look at this one, but I'm a bit of a space geek, so this one I really liked.
Well, I want to go to space. It sounds awesome. I love that data. No, it makes, in a serious note, it makes me think, like, how many times have you been in a, an executive meeting or whatever, and someone says, oh, we should go into retail. Oh, no, we should go into manufacturing. Oh, we should do this, because they just had a deal come through, or some customer that is really happy is from that industry. But, like, wouldn't it be better to go look at the data and run the data by industry to figure out where you would have the best business opportunity, right? Like, I think that's a phenomenal idea.
What's interesting, so when I was back in a publicly traded company, we would produce these once a year big over 100 slide board decks. It was like competitive reviews, all the different business units, market opportunity. And I don't know if anybody on the call's ever had to be the person that did this, where I went through and punched in, like, I'm looking for the CAGR growth, trying to get some sort of nugget to indicate some sort of, right, where we should go. Right. Half the time we search the internet and we try to come up with something that seems compelling, that supports kind of the line that we think we want to go anyway. Once we had, I was a multi-time former customer of Bombora's. Once we had access to Bombora's data, what we were able to start to do in that instance was we'd say, hey, here's our brand health. Here's how we stack up against the competition, just in terms of research in the market we care about, and then the market as a whole, right? Those are two very different things. How do our different solutions stack up against the market versus our competitors? What's the interest overall in each of our different business units in terms of active research from the market? Is that trending up, trending down? And then we'd cut it by the different geographies to take a look at that. And where it really became helpful was as we were having that exact conversation. Hey, we think we should do a vertical campaign, or we should go into verticals. Which one should we do? I can get a lot of seller opinion, right, on which ones we should do, or I can turn around and say, actually, here's where we're seeing the most research across these industries. Let's make those our plays. At the same time, right, the other perspective you go look at that is, hey, we think we want to go enter France, for example, as a market. Well, let's look at our brand versus the competitors in that market. How do they stack up? What's the active interest in research, right? That in market that you hit on at the beginning in France for our solutions and services. Is there enough for us to, feel like that's a smart market, or should we enter another one? And having the active research data to help drive those strategy decisions was something we never had at our fingertips before. Because it's one thing to get a year-old report that's saying CAGR numbers and big things like that. It's another thing to tailor it specifically to my solutions, my brand, my competitors in that market, and then make a business decision off of that. And so that was, again, another interesting way. That's funny you brought that up. So last one. Media and advertising, really interesting. A lot of good nuggets in here as you're looking at everything from influencer marketing to whatnot. But these are two that really jumped out. Kind of a consistent theme. There still continues to be concerns around data and privacy, and that it's growing. A lot of businesses in this space are actively looking for solutions that will help them safeguard their customers' data and manage that effectively. One survey found that actually 95% of consumers want brands to protect their data. They have an expectation that if I give you my data, you will handle it safely. And advertisers seem to be really responding to this demand. We saw massive increases in things in CDPs, and research into data acquisition grew by 67% in Q1 over the 22 averages. So what we're able to see here is that businesses are finding new ways to acquire customer data while they're also balancing those privacy concerns at the same time. They really want to focus on that, because the advertisers are looking for more sophisticated ways to get their target audiences, right, with that data acquisition, while respecting privacy, because we actually saw a decrease in research and interest in some of the third-party data elements that are there as well, with kind of the horizons and the concerns of Google and third-party cookies potentially going away. And so is that really right? Customers are becoming more aware of their data rights. Businesses need to focus on prioritizing that. We're seeing a lot of active interest in this space here. Before I go on to the fun one on the metaverse, Brian, any thoughts on what you're hearing on the data privacy side?
Well, I mean, I think everyone was really worried about, what would happen, cookies just disappear, but, it's played out very differently. I think really what's happened is quality is up. maybe quantities down in some way, but I think people are still able to do more, which is what we're seeing in these trends. People are actually doing more targeted than they had before. I think pre-roll is really interesting. So there's been I know in the full report, I saw that pre-roll video has had a lot of increase in momentum and adoption. And then also tracking back to business growth. So I saw a lot of stuff on, which again, it's sort of like counterintuitive to the privacy stuff. It's like, if we were a completely privacy compliant world, 100%, you wouldn't track in anything. Like it'd be so hard, right? But a lot of the research is showing that that people are able to quantify that video works, that video drives sales, that it drives conversion. So I think there's so much good stuff happening here. I think we were all worried like 2-3 years ago, everyone was really freaked out. And now we're like, oh, it's going to be fine. And it's going to be better.
It's that balance that you want your privacy, but you still want things to be relevant to you, as we see them, especially in the ads that we consume. But someday they'll get it right so that as soon as you purchase, you're not followed for the next 6 weeks on the thing you already bought. But it still happens. So the last one I want to hit on is this one around metaverse. Really interesting. So the TLDR on it right now that we were seeing is really, there's still significant interest in the metaverse. According to a recent survey, 56% of media buyers are still utilizing or they're actively considering some sort of metaverse marketing initiative. But as we looked at our data and what the market was showing in terms of their behavior, there's a bit of a complex narrative that came out around this. There was a 39% decrease in metaverse consulting research. So people aren't seeking out the consultants who are the experts in this as much. Corporate metaverse research fell by 39% as well in that Q1 timeframe. So significantly down on the corporate side. Metaverse as a strategy also declined by a little over 20%. So despite all these downward trends from the corporate behavior that was happening, overall metaverse research grew by 50% in Q1. And so what's going on there? What's happening? And so the data suggests that while there's still a lot of interest in the metaverse, right? And I think we're going to see this pick up again with the Apple Vision Pro, right? The AR, right, perspective on this. Businesses are becoming a lot more cautious about investing in it. It was super hot when cash was flush. I think part of this has to do with the economy that we're seeing along those lines. But the increase in overall metaverse says, hey, the concept's still relevant, it's still intriguing, but it may not be where businesses are wanting to place their bets today, or they want to see how this shakes out before they make that no-go decision over the coming months here. But overall corporate focus real quick, and then we'll get into some questions. We hit on a lot of the different ways in which intent data can be utilized. And as a part of that, we've actually released this new intent data application framework. And it's all the different ways intent data can be used in many of the ways you think about it traditionally, right? In marketing for smarter programmatic advertising and paid social, or demand gen, to sales, right? Key account intelligence and sales prioritization, but also gets into a lot of the other applications that you can do when you have the raw access to this intent data. All right, you can do that market intelligence like we just did with this report in context of your business. Use it to drive your content strategy, right? Campaign measurement. Use it in your board of directors decks, right? Things like that. That's not on here, but a lot of different applications to which you can do along those lines. So if this stuff's interesting to you or you got some ideas, would love to riff. I geek out on this stuff all the time, but huge potential.
And just quick story in 30 seconds or left. But so Jeff, you're how long have you been at Bombora now?
6-7 months, not super long.
Okay, yeah. So Jeff came in as CMO for Bombora 6 or 7 months ago. Now, obviously, you've been using intent data, so you knew about it. But nonetheless, you showed me Jeff created a huge slide deck for a board meeting that he had to go into, and he used the intent data to build all the slides. I was like, oh, that is so good. Because one, now you're an expert on the business that you've only been in for 6 months because you're using the data. So anyways, just super cool idea of if you have access to this kind of data, you should use it to put trends into board decks. Like that's the quick and dirty of it.
Yeah, huge potential on it and measuring your brand and a lot of different impacts across that. Love to geek out with anybody on that as we go through that. But a lot of cool things on this. If anything here piques your interest, don't hesitate to reach out. But let's get into some of the questions here. Let's go to the next slide. And you can get the Upswell report from that URL. Take a look at it. Would love your thoughts and feedback. This is our first one. Our plans to do these twice a year. So our next one, our aim is to have that rolling in so it can support your 24 planning. And then Brian, I know you guys have a killer newsletter that I signed up for and I get a lot of value, but I don't know if you want to give a quick on that one, and then we'll dive into the questions.
Yeah, so our newsletter is made for anyone in a go-to-market role. So sales, marketing, CS. It's got all our frameworks. So like unlike traditional analyst firms, we make all of our research and guides and frameworks free, and you can get them all by just simply subscribing to the newsletter. And every Monday morning, you'll get a new research piece, new framework, and so would love for you guys to join that.
Awesome. I see we've got a couple questions that have come in here. Be sure to type yours in if you want. There's our contact information. Chris, what are the questions we got?
All right, first, how did you gather this data and what is it from?
Yeah, so the short answer is Bombora on that one, but so there's a lot of underline on that. I'll try to go faster because I know we're already a couple minutes over on time, but please feel free to stick around if you can. So Bombora has a industry first, completely unique co-op of publishers and brands, white paper download sites. It's really a massive aggregation of different data providers who give us access to this information. So we have a value exchange with them where they hang a tag on their site that gives us all kinds of incredible information about, who are the companies that are consuming this research? Are they actually reading it, right? So there's scroll velocity and dwell time, using natural language processing to understand the difference between apple to fruit and Apple, the company, as you're talking about that. And this involves event signups, webinar downloads, as I said, different brand websites, etc. And it's a fully consent-driven value exchange because what do they get in return? Well, they actually get information on who's coming to their site, what content are they most interested in, so that they can tailor their messages, right? The content that they're writing, right? If you think about different publishers that are out there, Wall Street Journal, and others in that vein there. And so over 4,000 different companies that come in that. And what's really cool on that is on everything that we're tracking, we're able to keep a standard baseline. We can tell you for everything we're tracking over the last 3 months, what's been the standard for all the companies researching that, and when are we seeing a statistically significant change in that research behavior. And that's what we were able to detect as we went through this. So we gathered the data from across that co-op, looking backwards in time historically to see what was really that trend that was occurring and what really stood out to us across these 7 industries as we took a lot there. So a lot to unpack in that. Happy to go in depth on the co-op and things like that, but it's a really unique way because a lot of other groups a lot of other intent data, you can't get that historical view or not near as long as one. You also don't have that consistent flow of data coming in. You're kind of sporadic looking for keywords and some things like that. And so we're actually able to track that truly significant changes that happen in terms of that research behavior and the volume that comes in there. So that's where the data came from. We can look backwards up to 3+ years on this kind of data. We chose to look at kind of the key trends at that moment in time. But for some of our customers, we'll look further back in terms of kind of their strategies and what's going on there. So that's where the data came from.
All right. How did you account for varying quality, and did you use keywords?
So I hit on that one a little bit. So as with any data, there's always some noise and things like that. So we worked with our data science team to kind of figure out where was the noise a little bit there, but our data is pretty clean as it comes in because we've already normalized for a lot of those different elements there. Things like, did they actually read the page, right? That's a fundamental just baseline thing that happens versus how many times have you clicked on an article, never to actually go read it. And then you just close that tab later. So that all those different pieces get removed there. When it comes to keywords, what we're actually able to do is we can actually tie in specific keywords into into topics and build signals around those that then we're able to monitor across these different all the different areas we were looking at as we went through there. So what we found is keywords often will miss nuance. They'll miss, right, that Apple example that I said there, right? Is this a fruit? Is this a business, right? If we're talking about train, are we talking about a company train? Are we talking about a locomotive? Are we talking about training a human, right? There's a lot of different nuance to that. And our NLP is able to pull that all out together and synthesize that. So that was kind of how we went in. So we worked with our data science team to remove any of the noise that was still remaining in the system. Leverage keywords in context of building holistic signals, but not keywords themselves due to some of the inaccuracies we found with those. And so that's where, and we know that data comes from a quality data co-op already, that it's not from the Kim Kardashian cat videos realm of the internet. It's a highly curated, right, business to business internet, essentially, is the way I like to think about it.
Okay. Why these industries versus others?
Good question. So I kind of hit on it a little at the beginning there. So as you said at the start of the call, Chris, I teach marketing at Oregon State University, and one of my biggest things, there's a guy by the name Jason Miller, rock star. He was at Marketo and then LinkedIn. He invented this concept called turkey dinner content, right? As you're going through it, and the idea is for Thanksgiving, right, you cook a big turkey and then you don't eat it all. So what else can you do with it? How do you cut it into different pieces? How do you incorporate it into other dishes, etc.? And so this was one of our big lean-ins into that kind of big rock content turkey dinner strategy components, where we said, hey, let's look at our market and see for our ICP, for our total relevant market, what are the top industries that are looking at us right now? And so we aligned to those as we went through there. And so part of this is actually an overarching campaign strategy for us, where we really just want these industries to see that our data is different as you look at it, that you can't really get these historical views and do these kinds of reports and syntheses that from other intent providers as you go through that. And so, one of the reasons we picked these were the top industries doing that, with the goal of them hopefully saying, hey, I want this in context of my business. Specifically, I want to research this area, that area. I have a product question, maybe a product strategy, or where I want to enter. And so we're hoping that it stimulates some of those pieces. So, right, we don't just always make content for the sake of making content. We make it with a strategy in mind, and we know that the data can really fuel and enrich our customers and our prospects. And so that was kind of the way we went about it. These are the industries that are interested in us. So it helps us in our endeavors. And then hopefully helping everybody else in the process here, really giving them some great insights that they can take away and action immediately. If you're selling into these industries, you have some ideas now. If you're in these industries, you have some ideas as to how you can potentially leverage it, or where your competition might be getting ahead of you, or what they're thinking about. So that's kind of the way why we pick those.
Okay. Well, that's all we have for questions for right now.
Good questions. All right. Well, I know we ran a few minutes over. Thank you, everybody, for being on today. Thank you, Brian, for being a guest and some of those fun perspectives, because it's always fun to stretch that and say, there's the data, but then the ways we think about actually using that data changes, right, with our different lenses and our different perspectives. So thanks for being on.
Glad to be here. Thank you, guys.